Welcome back to The Right Hook with George Hook. Well, I don't have to tell anybody listening about my interest in rugby. But of course, the key part of rugby, the building block on which it's all based, is on the young people who play the game for pure enjoyment and not for money. And of course, if they are really young, then there's a whole bunch of parents involved. But also there are volunteers, coaches, bagmen, all sorts of things who give their time freely and generously. That's why a rugby conference taking place in August that addresses those key issues is very important. And I'm delighted to welcome Eunan O'Carroll, Director of Core Consulting, to the studio. The conference is when, first of all?
Good afternoon, George. The conference is on the 27th of August, which is the last Saturday before the boys and girls go back to school.
Okay.
In the Aviva Stadium.
And explain to me what you're going to do at the conference.
The conference is an opportunity for boys and girls and parents, and indeed amateur coaches, to come together and get an informed opinion and a detailed understanding of the issues that young players and parents are facing in the youth game today. The youth game is becoming increasingly more professionalised, and parents who, are faced with making choices about players' diet, the mental strength of players, the balance between playing rugby, some of them at a competitive level in school and doing their lessons and doing their education, is a huge challenge for many parents. And when we set about doing the research for this conference about 2 years ago, it became very clear very quickly that there was a void out there. If you're a player, 13, 14, 15, and you're not in the the Leinster programme or the Munster programme, but you still have an ambition to play and be competitive, those sort of professional and experts are not available to you. So this conference, which is the first of time it's ever been held in the country, will bring together, and we say huge thank you to them, bring together the experts in the game today in Ireland and give an insight into the issues which those kids will face.
Now, it's in the Aviva Stadium on the 27th of August. The fact it's in the Aviva Stadium seems to give a sense that it has the imprimatur of the IRFU. Where are the IRFU on this?
It's not an IRFU event. The IRFU have been very, very supportive, and huge thanks to them, but it's not an IRFU event. We picked the Aviva Stadium, George, because it's the first year of the event. We would hope that next year our ambition for this concept is that it will be regional. All the schools, all of the clubs in Ireland have been communicated about this, and we're hoping to bring this event regional next year in Ulster, Munster, Leinster and Connacht. And the idea behind that, George, is to raise funding to perhaps establish a doctorate in rugby innovation, maybe through one of the universities, something we've done very successfully in the property sector. So we picked the Aviva to, I suppose, launch the first event. It's obviously synonymous with Irish rugby, and it's a good venue, and they're going to host us on the 27th.
Well, what's the title of this? Have you given it a title?
Yeah, it's called Rugby Generation X, and it's about, I suppose, looking at how we empower and how we inform the next generation, the 13, the 14, the 15 and the 16-year-olds about the future. Well,
I mean, you have a lot to talk about, that's for sure. I mean, you have the conflict, obviously, which you alluded to for parents between study and sport, because certainly and you're a Blackrock College boy, like Blackrock College is, and my school, Pres Cork, these major rugby schools, there's a pressure on a kid when he's playing, and at the same time you're trying to get him through his leaving cert. So there's an immediate difficulty for parents, and somebody that talks about it's a great help. You then the issue of diet. It's now well over, it's over 20 years since we first started seeing young people putting additives into their food, they didn't know what they were putting in their food. So we've got that to worry about. We now have, of course, the whole issue of head injury and so on in the sport. So this is very timely, I have to say. My guest, by the way, is Eunan O'Carroll, Director of Core Consulting, but he's joined me on the basis of Rugby Generation X, the conference at the Aviva on August 27th. open to everybody, really.
It is. It's open to boys and girls and parents. I mean, the registrations have been very strong, and thankfully we've attracted interest right across the 4 provinces. But it's predominantly kids in their 13s, 14s, 15s and 16s. Kids who will be trying to compete for club sides and maybe junior cup sides. And
that's interesting, and I wouldn't have thought this. The core of the audience, therefore, is actually going to be young people rather than necessarily parents, you feel?
Yeah, we unfortunately, we're only limited, George, to 350 tickets, which is a parent and a child, a boy or girl. We will have 700 at the event, and from the registrations we've had so far, which have been strong, it looks like it's the 14 and 15 year olds who have been most attracted by it.
Okay.
And if you look at that profile, George, they're boys and girls, and it's interesting to see the number of girls also who have registered, which is very welcome. But they seem to be players who will be competing for youths under 15 sides, JCT in some of the rugby schools. It's interesting you make the point about the study, because there's a fantastic presentation by Dr. Kate Kirby. And, you know, if you're a player in one of the schools, like Pres, as you've mentioned, and you want to be, or are in a position to be an elite player in the Munster Academy, but you also want to study engineering, well, that's not maybe possible, because the time for lecturers to be an engineer is going to coincide with...
Well, it's not a question of maybe not possible. It's impossible.
It is. And
so you're going to have to make a choice.
Exactly.
Do you want to be an engineer or a professional rugby player with the risks involved?
Yeah, and if you're a player, perhaps like me, and you know, if you're a parent who maybe is tempted to live your rugby ambition through your kid, but your kid, you know, is talented but also wants to be an engineer, that's a huge challenge for you. And, you know, I think Dr. Kate Kirby, her presentation will be very, very welcome on the day. But also, you mentioned about diet. I mean, you know, when I was playing rugby back in the 80s and the early 90s, we were told to be as big as we possibly could and become a concrete block and hit as hard as we can. Certainly, if you look at some of the books written by some of the All Blacks, that's a very, very different thing. So, diet, you know, Nora Freelon is going to do a thing on diet, which for many parents is a huge, huge issue.
Registration. How do they register? How much is register?
Yeah, the beneficiary of this year's conference is Liberty Saints in the inner city. Tom McGee and the fabulous work he's doing down there for inner city children. You go on to rugbygenerationx.ie. It's €105 for a parent and €55 for a child, and the proceeds will go to Tom's work down in the Liberty.
So a parent would probably tend to go with the child. So that means €160.
Yeah.
It's a day-long conference.
It's a day-long conference. It'll kick off at registration at 9:30. It's been opened by Joe Schmidt, and best of luck to Joe tomorrow, but it's been opened by the Irish head coach. And then there will be a series of lectures where the children and the parents will be at a lectures together. And then the players will go into a series of workshops, and they will be spoken to in their age groups about diet, about strength and conditioning. And while they're out of the main auditorium, you'll have people like Jerry Hussey and people like Colin McEntee talking to the parents about how it is they are managing the talent, so the parents have an informed opinion. And then we will bring all the players back. The children will get a chance to see some of the emerging players, the likes of Gary Ringrose from Leinster, the likes of Andrew Conway from Munster, Peter Robb from Connacht, Peter Smith, who's just taken up as the head of the Leinster Academy, will be on board, and Craig Doyle will get the opportunity to talk to the players and talk to those boys and girls about, you know, how the likes of Gary had his experience going through school. So it's a day-long event. The kids also, we are very lucky to have Canterbury as one of our sponsors, and they very kindly, through Uniformity, are going to give the kids, a Canterbury training top with Rugby Generation X on it, and there'll be a tour of the stadium. So it's a good day out for the parents and things. And but more importantly, I think it's an opportunity for those players who may not be on elite squads to get an informed opinion about how perhaps they should be balancing the whole area of rugby.
Well, good luck to it. I'm sure we'll be talking about it here on the programme as we get closer to August. But it's August 27th, Aviva Stadium, Rugby Generation X, €105 a parent, €55 for a child, so effectively probably 160 for that pair. An extraordinary day. I've already heard some of the key people who will be there, and I, for one, will support this whole idea of this education, which I have to say has been sadly lacking for all the thousands of young men and women who play this sport. And Eunan O'Carroll, Director of Core Consulting, has done a great job, for which he is to be praised. June, thank you for joining me.
Thanks, George. Thanks for having me on.